Hi, I'm Bill O'Reilly. Thanks for watching us tonight. More danger for Americans. That is the subject of this evening's Talking Points memo. Over the weekend, President Obama attended the G7 summit in Germany. Topics of conversation range from economics to terrorism. By the way, it used to be the G8, but Russia got booted out because of Putin the invader. Anyway, earlier today, Mr. Obama said something that's not only frightening, but incredibly disturbing. He was asked about ISIS and why the USA does not have a strategy to stop the brutal jihadists.
When a finalized plan is presented to me by the Pentagon, then I will share it with the American people. It's not, we don't yet have a complete strategy because it requires commitments on the part of the Iraqis as well. The details of that are not yet worked out.
So after nearly 2 years, the USA still does not have a plan to confront ISIS. Here's what the president said last August.
We don't have a strategy yet. I think what I've seen in some of the news reports suggests that folks are getting a little further ahead of where we're at than we currently are.
That was right after the beheading of an American citizen by ISIS. Now, there are only two possible scenarios here, two. First, that the U.S. military is grossly incompetent and can't come up with a plan to defeat a terror group comprised of about 30,000 individuals. Or two, that the President of the United States lacks the will to defeat an enemy that threatens every American. Talking Points is throwing in with option number two. Mr. Obama simply does not see the urgency and does not have the fire to take on terrorists who are slaughtering thousands of innocent people. That's the truth. And sadly, millions of Americans are willing to accept that fact and still support the president. If every American demanded the USA become proactive once again in defeating the jihad, then it would happen. But many of us are apathetic. As long as the mass murder is overseas, we don't care. Of course, it won't be long until the murder comes here, because that's the stated goal of ISIS. On another front, the Chinese government has been accused of hacking into websites of the U.S. federal government. Apparently, more than 4 million Americans have had their personal data stolen by the Chinese. Today, Mr. Obama was asked about that.
We haven't publicly unveiled who we think may have engaged in these cyber attacks. But I can tell you that we have known for a long time that there are significant vulnerabilities and that these vulnerabilities are going to accelerate as time goes by.
So what are you going to do about it, Mr. President? I guess in a couple of years, he might come up with a strategy. I think everybody's getting the picture here. We have a leader who doesn't want to lead. Barack Obama is interested in the theoretical dilemma of climate change. He's interested in social justice, in redistributing American wealth. Not much interested in blatant attacks on America's security and mass murder around the world. It appears to me that Barack Obama is not going to change. So this country is now in a race to see if we can avoid catastrophe in the next 18 months. A very dangerous game. And that's the memo. Now for the top story tonight, reaction. Joining us from Washington, Charles Krauthammer, author of the big bestseller, Things That Matter, The Perfect Father's Day Gift. Charles, you know, this above everything else the president has done in 6.5 years bothers me the most. That he would tell the world after 2 years, we really don't know what to do. We don't really have a strategy. You know, if this were the private sector, Barack Obama would be fired by any company, anywhere, at any time. Or am I wrong?
Look, he's got a strategy, and his strategy is just make it through to January 2017 and turn it over to the next president. He hasn't had a strategy on Iraq since the day he came into office. He had one objective. The campaign promise, remember what he said, I'm here to end wars and not to start them. And he thinks that you can unilaterally declare an end to the war when other guys want to wage war against us. And the collapse of Iraq as a fighting force occurred as a result of his total withdrawal. This was not always the case. In the surge, we had very strong allies who fought with us and expelled al-Qaeda from Iraq, the predecessor to ISIS, expelled and humiliated them. But the minute we left, it fell apart. He left no residual force behind. Obama is admitting that there is nothing here. He says that the Pentagon has not completed its plans. We know that is farcical. The Pentagon is saying anonymously to Fox News, officials are saying, that of course they have a plan. What in God's name is he talking about? But this is vintage Obama. You never take the blame. You never admit. You simply put the blame on somebody else.
But Charles, he is admitting, because history is going to look back on this as an enormous debacle. And if we ever get hit by ISIS, his presidency is going to go down as one of the worst, or perhaps the worst in the history of the country. He can't say after 2 years, we don't have a strategy against something that is this brutal. But that's what he's saying. And by the way, it's not just Iraq. The command and control of ISIS is in Syria. It's in Syria. You don't have to get mired in Iraq to take out the leadership. You got to go to Syria, and he has no will to do it.
Well, we know what he's done with Syria. He made one red line saying if chemical weapons were used, the whole world saw it. He announced it publicly. His Secretary of State gave a very eloquent speech saying now this was something that the United States simply could not tolerate. And we know what happened. It was used. He caved. He did nothing. And now the Syrian regime is using chlorine gas. And, of course, we are doing nothing. I'll tell you what Obama ought to worry about. It's not yet an attack on the United States, but here's the danger. Baghdad is being surrounded by ISIS. If you were ISIS, what would you do? You would launch a Tet offensive, like what the Viet Cong did in 1968. You're not going to win Baghdad, you're not going to hold it. But if you can penetrate the green zone, you penetrate the U.S. embassy, you kill Americans, you hoist the black flag over the American embassy, even for just a day, you will have struck a blow against the United States that will be incalculable. If they are doing anything in the Pentagon, it is not presenting strategies to roll back ISIS or to defeat it, essentially, or to wipe it out, which is what the president pretends. You have to worry right now about what might happen with that kind of offensive. And that, to me, is the great danger between now and January 2017.
It is amazing to me as a historian to watch 2 years, and he goes out with no shame and tells the world, we don't know what to do. It's just amazing. I got to go, Charles. But we'll continue this next time.
All right. Yeah, I'm sure it's not going to go away.
That's for sure.